While arriving in Omaha to check out Arizona, it dawned on me that the Cowboy linebacker core might be the biggest X factor to winning 10 games. And then Athlon Sports decided to say we have the worst linebacker core in the Big 12, accentuating to me that we can definitely win 10 games for a multitude of reasons.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Holliday State. Today, we're brought to you by Game Time Tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use a code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Get squared away with the best in the ticketing industry today with Game Time. Meanwhile, we shift into the conversation of Oklahoma State winning 10 games. No, Ivan White, Sports Illustrated, recently put out an article, and he is not crazy. Winning 10 games is a possibility, so let's examine some of the reasons why. The biggest reason might be simply because of the schedule. Much like 2023, the scheduling set us up for a very successful season. 7 home games, and some of the road games were pretty navigable. This is the same thing for Oklahoma State entering this particular season, in my personal opinion. We do not play TCU. We do not play BYU. We do not play Arizona State. We don't play West Virginia. We do, however, get UT Martin and Tulsa. Both of those should be W's. Am I saying we're going to beat the Oregon Ducks? No, I'm not. But we are going to cover that a little bit more extensively because if you watch their spring game, we know the spring game isn't everything. They did not look so hot, a.k.a. that Oregon spring game equaled a quarterback that might not even start in Stillwater, Oklahoma. So is that the end-all, be-all? No, it's not. We're going to talk about that a little bit more later. But if you look at the spring game, Oregon looks susceptible to potentially getting got, especially by somebody that is not getting enough love nationally. We have Baylor at home. We have Kansas State at home. We have Iowa State at home. We do have to go to Lubbock, followed by a trip to KU. But outside of that, the road trips are pretty manageable. Going to Arizona should be a W. We have some redemption at the Bounce House at UCF. This is a very manageable schedule. This is a schedule that could potentially set you up for a 10-win season. Because when you look at it on face value, a couple wins are pretty predetermined. We should be able to beat Arizona, should be able to beat Houston, should be able to beat Cincinnati. You should be able to beat UCF. You put all those things together, you're already talking about a 7-win season. It's only going to take a few things and a few minor areas to slip our way to make it a real possibility. So other than the schedule, another reason why winning 10 games at Oklahoma State this season could be a very manageable task is this coaching staff. Whether we're going to have Todd Grantham for the next 5, 6, 7 years, to me, it doesn't really matter. If you look at Jim Knowles, he was able to catapult himself from Duke to Oklahoma State to now, obviously, winning a national championship at Ohio State, taking another job, making more money. The Jim Knowles path is very feasible for somebody like a Todd Grantham. And if he brings in the NFL system, as he has, and he brings in some of the SEC models that he definitely has brought to Stillwater, their lack of excuses should be paramount in the success that Oklahoma State has this season. Whether they're here for 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, in my personal opinion, it doesn't matter. It's all about winning and getting Oklahoma State back to the levels that it's supposed to be, which is 8 to 10 wins, right? That is the expectation all day, every day in Stillwater, Oklahoma. Mike Gundy has given us those expectations, and this season is a real shot to get back where he's supposed to be. And I think lastly, one of the biggest reasons is Mike Gundy. All of the times that we've been projected to have a Big 12 title run, we did not live up to expectations. All of the times that we were projected to be at the bottom half of the Big 12 is traditionally whenever we rise up and make something crazy happen. Not to mention, Mike Gundy did do something unprecedented and fire almost every single coach on staff and bring in entirely new staffs. On top of that, I don't think it's coincidental that he has a couple, in-person meetings with Nick Saban. And then all of a sudden, we're hiring somebody like a Todd Grantham. And Mike Gundy is talking about in conversational portions of the hiring process, he was told for you to have a defense that you really want, you have to hire a head coach of the defense to coordinate everything the way that he wants to recruit the way he wants to develop the way that he wants to. We have essentially done that with Todd Grantham. And then Todd Grantham went out and hired his guys like Ron Osborne and Cap Deedy and Ryan McNamara and Jules Montanaro. This is a good foundational piece for Oklahoma State defense that is looking to get back to its 2021 levels. Is that going to happen? Probably not with a team full of transfers, but at least it's a possibility. So you have the schedule that does line up, 7 home games for Oklahoma State. The road games are pretty manageable, right? Whenever you have to go to Kansas, to Texas Tech, to UCF, to Oregon, some of those are going to be difficult, of course. In the bipolar Big 12, you don't know which ones, but at the same point in time, again, you avoid the teams like TCU, like BYU at the top, like Arizona State. And then you do have, that Oregon game. If you win that, then the expectation for the season should change pretty drastically. And again, we're going to dive into Oregon a little bit later on, but the schedule sets us up for potential 10-win season. The new staff, in my personal opinion, definitely shakes us up to have a 10-win season. And we're not even talking about the offensive side of the ball. If we're going to talk about the individual technical training that is happening on the defensive side, likewise, it's happening on the offensive side. Doug Meacham is going to be working with the inside receivers. Theron H is going to be working with the outside receivers. We have Cooper Bassett working with offensive linemen. We have Grant Garner working with offensive linemen. With Andrew Mitchell working with offensive linemen. So the individual training and the technical aspects of what Oklahoma State is trying to accomplish seems to be very visible. The biggest difficulty is going to be able to implement all of the changes in the offseason and make it practical on the field. Make the most amount of sense to the players. And on the defensive side of the ball, that's all you're looking for out of this Todd Grantham-led system is to have some of that NFL acumen, right? If we ran everything, rookie minicamp, OTAs, all the way down to roster cuts, some of these individuals that made the roster are because they're going to be factored into this season, into the success that this potential team could have. The biggest X factor, however, on all of that is likely to be the linebacker core. And if you saw Athlon Sports, they don't seem to like our linebacker core. Matter of fact, they have them pegged as the worst in all of the Big 12. I think we can disagree wholeheartedly on that one. Ladies and gentlemen, in order for you to get the best in the ticketing industry, you got to get rocking and rolling with Game Time today. The NBA playoffs is down to the wire with the Thunder and the Pacers. The Pacers obviously are trying to make things interesting, but there's not much like the NBA playoffs. The intensity, the buzzer beaters, fans losing their ever-loving minds. It's the kind of atmosphere that you want to be in. This year's matchup between the Thunder and the Pacers is delivering everything we want thus far, and Game Time is going to make it fast and easy for you to get the seats that you need for even the biggest of playoff games, the finals. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to tip-off. With the last-minute killer deals, the panoramic seat views, and no surprise fees at checkout, Game Time is a total game changer. You're going to be able to get on the app and see the zone deals where they're offering 60% off in the best sections. You're going to love the exact panoramic view from the seat before you buy without surprises. The app's going to make it ridiculously simple. 2 taps, bada bing, bada bang, and you are done. And with a Game Time guarantee, you know exactly what the best deals are going to be. If you find a better deal in the same row and the same section, Game Time will credit you back 110% of the difference. So go on and take the guesswork out of you buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create that account, redeem that code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today for last-minute tickets, lowest prices, always guaranteed. From game time to potential prime time, and that is going to be the linebacker core. Athlon Sports put out their positional ratings for all of the Big 12. And, of course, no surprise, Oklahoma State gets no love. But we're projected 14th in the Big 12, 15th in the Big 12 in multiple position groups. But we're projected 16th in the Big 12 for linebacker core. So according to Athlon Sports, we have absolutely no shot whatsoever at a 10-win season because our linebacker room is not good enough to do much of anything. Well, this is why I think it could be an X factor. Now, of course, we've talked about the individuals that were able to make it through the rookie minicamp, OTAs, cuts, the whole 9 yards. And some of the guys that we let go are surprising names. Jonathan Agumadu was a factor in this previous season, as was Yamil Talib. So those were guys that were kind of surprising to see go. Then you had Trip White, the Ole Miss transfer, coming in at 6'3", 220 pounds. You have Pwaso Utu staying as a redshirt sophomore. You have Brandon Rawls coming over, 6 foot, 240 pounds from Saginaw Valley State. Brian McCoy was a 5th to 7th round draft grade coming from Akron, decided to bet on himself, spend another year in college, come to Oklahoma State. You have Tamarick Johnson, much like Gunnar Wilson, made it through that round of cuts at 6'2", 225 pounds out of Midlothian, Texas. And then you have Ike Essenwood. The dude has been the Energizer Bunny. He's been the spark plug on this linebacker core for a couple of years now. Now he's going to have his opportunity to see it play out on the field. We are going to deal with a couple injuries here and there, right? Gunnar Wilson is a little banged up. We got a couple other guys that might have some minor issues that likely aren't going to be big problems whenever we move on in the season. But outside of those dudes, the biggest X factors, in my opinion, are going to be the outside linebackers, primarily guys like Jaleel Johnson, Malik Charles, Rashad Bradley, and Chendavian Bradley. And of course, Chendavian Bradley was a former 5-star All-American, comes over after a freshman year at Tennessee, goes to Hutchinson Community College, wins a national championship because Tennessee said he wasn't putting on weight fast enough. However, he did go from 205 pounds to 235 pounds in the last year and a half, which is precisely what Tennessee was hoping they would get out of him. Now that he has the weight gain that they couldn't seemingly get out of him, you factor that in with Rob Glass, the best strength and conditioning coach in the country. Sky is the limit for Chendavian Bradley. Rashad Bradley, of no relation, but Rashad walks in at 6'3", 255 pounds. East Mississippi Community College. He made a big name for himself there. He's been able to slide in pretty seamlessly here in Stillwater. I think that he's going to be an accentuation of what this staff can get out. The Malik Charles has the NFL background, the NFL pedigree. If it can all come together for him in Stillwater, Oklahoma, with somebody like Rob Glass, we could be talking about yet another defensive prospect getting drafted in the next year or two from this linebacker core. So all Athlon Sports think it's worse than the conference. I completely disagree. Then you have Jaleel Johnson. We know what Jaleel Johnson can do as a defensive end. We have a good understanding of what this transitionary period could look like because we could look no further than Colin Oliver, who is doing what? Playing at the NFL for the Green Bay Packers. His freshman year, he was one of the best defensive ends in the country. Matter of fact, he had that massive moment that we all remember, the sack against Caleb Williams to win Bedlam 2023 or 2021. Then you factor in this transition for Jaleel Johnson. At times, both Jaleel Johnson and Deshaun Brown looked like they were going to be next level, All-American level dudes. And then at times, our defense was completely in the wrong place at the wrong time, doing the wrong thing. So that's not all on Jaleel Johnson. And we've also heard from some individuals that have both stayed and left in the transfer portal that some of the intrigue for sticking around, somebody like Justin Kirkland, one of the reasons that he stayed for so long and wanted to continue to stay was because of the individual technical training that the defensive line is getting now that they were not getting the last two seasons. So Jaleel Johnson has been able to kind of explode on the scene without having a bunch of technical training behind him. Now that he's going to get that, I think the world is about to see what Jaleel Johnson could provide for this Oklahoma State squad. Sometimes it doesn't go swimmingly, right? The transitionary periods for KD, Kendall Daniels, that didn't go all that great. But I think anytime you can get somebody like Jaleel Johnson, 6'5", 260 pounds, to embrace a different role, if we can get the strength out of him that he already excelled at as a defensive lineman, we're going to be fine. If we can get him to understand the lay of the land on that side of the ball a little bit more, we saw the same thing with Colin Oliver, right? His first, 4 or 5 games as a true linebacker, he missed some gaps. He missed some dudes. He missed some assignments here and there. But as the season progressed, we saw more and more why Colin Oliver could be a linebacker at not only this level, but the next level. If we see that same maturation process for Jaleel Johnson, this linebacker core could be much better than anybody is giving us credit for. Because again, Brian McCoy already brings that NFL draft pedigree here because he was already a 5th, 7th round draft grade at Akron. Then you have Malik Charles. Then you have Rashad Bradley. Then you have former 5-star All-American and Tennessee freshman Chendavian Bradley. Then you have Jaleel Johnson making the move. I just think that there's too much talent that have been forced. They have been pushed. They have been driven to an unprecedented level in Stillwater, Oklahoma. This is being conducted differently, meaning that if you're one of the individuals that make the cut and you're still on scholarship and you're still in Stillwater, Oklahoma, that means that you're set to contribute pretty big ways this upcoming season. So for all of the confusion surrounding the quarterback position or the uncertainty revolving around the wide receiver position or what the uncertainty might look at the defensive line, All of that could kind of be covered up with the success of the linebackers. Speed kills. Trip White coming over from Ole Miss was hopefully going to be an integral part of the success of the season, but I don't think we could have foreseen how fast he is adjusting, how quickly he's understanding how to utilize the leverage within the playbook and work on communication, right? If we can get down the complexity of this defense, we could be talking about a Jim Knowles level system. And Jim Knowles took his success in Stillwater and catapulted it to a national title at Ohio State and head coach money at Penn State. So if you factor in that Todd Grantham identified Cap Deedy and Ryan McNamara as the guys that he needed to come in and inject life into this linebacker core, a linebacker core that is traditionally successful, right? We're always talking about Amen Ogbongbemiga being in the NFL still as a Chicago Bear. We talk about the fact that Malcolm Rodriguez is about to be healthy enough to make yet another run with the Detroit Lions. Now you've got Nick Martin set to be a starter for the San Francisco 49ers as a rookie. This is a position, in my thoughts, that should get more respect. But we're going to need to continue to fill this pipeline at this position. I think we have more than enough to do that this season, whether it be Brian McCoy or Trip White or Chendavian Bradley or Jaleel Johnson. This linebacker core is going to surprise some people. And I kind of like the fact that we're being projected as this lonely old group that's not going to be able to do much of anything this season. According to Athlon Sports, we are dead last in linebackers. That is the thing to circle by the end of the season, because if this linebacker crew, both inside and outside linebackers, even the pseudo stand-up defensive end dudes, if all of that can come together with the intensity that this whole offseason has undergone, with the increased technical training aspects, if they can get down the calls and they can get down the variations of each individual call and they can work on communication, this could be the best defense in the Big 12. We could go from the ashes to the top. And just like projecting a 10-win season because of the schedule, because of this staff, because Mike Gundy is typically questioned the most on his big years. If you're to have a preseason, Mike Gundy, Oklahoma State, top 3 in the Big 12, as a fan, we know that typically doesn't equal a lot of success. However, when Oklahoma State is pegged to be at the bottom of the conference and you're playing with house money, these are the years that Mike Gundy does his best coaching. Mike Gundy also did step up to the call. He fired everybody, hired an entirely new staff, has a full head coach on the defensive side of the ball. Is he going to be involved with the Doug Meacham offense? Yeah, probably. But the offensive things have as much layers to them as the defensive side. And for all of the craziness happening around this conference 24/7, the fact that Athlon Sports has our linebackers projected to be the worst in the conference has me the most excited, because athletically, size-wise, skill, speed, we have that stuff. So if now we have an SEC level training regimen and we have an NFL level expectation in the building, then we could see all of this group end up being one of the best in the Big 12 and being the X factor to why Oklahoma State does in fact reach that 10-win plateau. They're better than anticipated, or they're better than expected, and I'm anticipating massive things from them in this upcoming season. Speaking of upcoming seasons, Josh Holliday at least has made a move, right? We've got a dude now. Oklahoma State is not factoring into the Omaha College World Series. The Arizona Wildcats are, ironically enough, I'm here in Omaha, hopefully about to get eyes on Arizona. And thankfully, Josh Holliday is not seemingly waiting to the Major League Draft before he refills the roster, as he did go out and get one of the top JUCO pitchers in the country by landing Kai Fei, the right-handed pitcher from Central Arizona College. 16 appearances, 9 games started, has a 4-2 record with 2 saves, 65 innings pitched with a 2.07 ERA and 72 K. So when you look at the JUCO rankings, his 2 losses, by the way, were both manageable games that they could have won. Both of his losses were by less than 2 runs. So his record could have been a little bit different. But as you look nationally through the JUCO rankings, His games played were 278th in the country for all JUCO players. So not so hot. His appearances, 43rd most in the country for JUCO. Games started, 32nd most. Wins, 4 wins, was number 34 in all of JUCO baseball. Losses, 2, had him 17th in all of JUCO. Complete games, number 1 in all of JUCO baseball with 3. Shutouts, he was first in all of JUCO in that area as well. ERA, he was number 1 in all of JUCO with a 2.07. Now, he was also top 5 in JUCO when it came to wild pitches, but he was only 104th when it came to hit batsmen. So he might be a little bit of a wild thing. He might be a little bit of a game changer, but that's not anything that we can't correct at Oklahoma State. And that amount of innings, that amount of Ks, that amount of successful swing rates are imperative to what Oklahoma State's looking to do in the next season. We have to get back to super regionals. Is Omaha in the conversation? Maybe, maybe not. When you are replacing a legend like Rob Walton, it's not going to be easy, but we kind of assumed or we saw pieces that made it seem like we were going to wait until after the Major League Draft to figure out what we were going to need to replace with. Turns out we weren't exactly doing that because we did bring in a guy. Now, is Kai the typical 6'7", 6'9" dude that we get? No, but he's still like 6 foot, 205 pounds, or maybe 6'2", 205 pounds. So very adequate. He can hum it up to 96 miles an hour with a couple years of development at Obrate. There's no telling what that could end up being. But yeah, he can work right now, 94, 96 all day, every day. He has a pretty good package of off-speed stuff, obviously, to mix in here. Has a good strikeout rate. Doesn't necessarily, walk a ton. He might hit a few batsmen here and there. But thankfully, we're not waiting until the Major League Draft, right? We're not waiting to see what happens with Harrison Bodendorf or Sean Youngerman, because it is going to be important to see where those guys land. Right? Baseball is one of those few sports where, you can play essentially semi-pro in the summer, which is amazing. But obviously, the way that you get drafted typically equals whether you're coming back the next season, right? It's not a predetermined designation or anything to that effect. So we might have some players that are waiting to see what the draft boards say before they make a decision. But I don't necessarily think that that's an appropriate way to operate. And thankfully, Josh Holliday understands that. He has grabbed somebody that's one of the top arms in all of JUCO. With the way that the scholarships are divvied up nowadays, getting a JUCO kid is going to be normal. I mean, it's always been kind of normal, but I think even more so now with the NIL, the transfer market, the way that it all works itself out. Thankfully, we're not waiting too much longer. We got a dude that could develop into a top 3, top 4 rounder in the major leagues, because he had several suitors. I mean, when you put up those kind of numbers, right, when you're number 1 in all of JUCO in multiple categories, everyone in the country is going to want you. So I think this does speak to the fact that even though we don't have a pitching coach hired, you can still have all of the developmental stuff that Oprate Stadium provides that kind of make the coach somewhat insignificant. Now, a big-time coach could make a wild difference in this ball club, but at least we got a dude. And while we're up here in Omaha, so yesterday we recorded an entire show with no audio, so we're trying this again. But we're here to see Arizona. We're about to go tomorrow. We got tickets to go check out LSU, Arkansas. I love being up here. It's a shame that the Cowboys are not here. Obviously, that was my hope. And it's also crazy, I was telling some of the pitchers I work with, if almost any team in the Big 12 makes it to Omaha, except for Arizona, I can probably meander my way into getting some media passes. But it would be Arizona. It would be like one of the only shows in the country that Locked On doesn't have a host. But here we are. I'm excited to see what Arizona can do. You're carrying the Big 12 flag, so hats off to you. Ready to see what can be done by the AZ Wildcats repping the Big 12. Oklahoma State needs to get back here. Thankfully, we've got a piece now that could potentially help us get back here. I think we've got the linebacker core that could surprise some people nationally, and if they surprise some people enough, we could very well be talking about a 10-win season. Schedule, staff, Gundy, and then you factor in the linebacker core. these are the seasons that Oklahoma State fans should find the most exciting. It's a season they hammer the over because we're typically going to be a top 3 ball club, or at least that's the expectation. And if that's the case, then you can't really make a whole lot of money. This is the season to do so. Anywho, that's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State, because you could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you liked it. Dislike it if you didn't. That's okay, too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe. My podcast people out there. You're the bricks, the bread, the butter, the Fountain Dew, the funny stuff, funky stuff. You're all of it. You know what to do. Hit the stars. Leave some reviews. Later, taters.